welcome to the Simsbury Woman. My name is Shannon Nall. Thank you for joining us. I'm so happy today that we have a very unique guest joining us. Mary Sirianni is a Simsbury mother and advocate for children with cancer. Thank you so much for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, and we just want to start today with your story and your experience with your daughter, Zia, and her journey with cancer.
Okay, thank you. Thanks again for having me.
You're welcome.
It is, September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, so it's close to my heart. Never thought it would be, but it is. My daughter, Zia, is 6. She was diagnosed with acute lymphoblastic leukemia in December of 2009 at age 3. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia is also called ALL. It's a fast-growing cancer of the white blood cells. Wow. The white blood cells are meant in a typical person to fight infection. Mm-hmm. In a child or person with leukemia, your body overproduces immature white blood cells called blasts, and that blocks out the normal production of healthy white blood cells as well as platelets and red blood cells.
Wow.
So she was diagnosed in 2009.
Now this is, as we're sitting here talking about this, you're speaking in words that we may not all understand, but you've come to understand these, and that's a big journey as a parent to be able to digest and take in everything that is going on with your young child. So how did you first notice that there might be something wrong? How did she present?
She presented, I knew as a mother, and everybody was telling me, no, nothing's wrong with her, Mary, nothing's wrong. In fact, several people told me, you're a hypochondriacal mother. But I have a son too, and the two of them would be in the back seat of the car, and I would look at both of their faces in the rearview mirror, and she just did not look right to me. She was very pale, and she was very tired. And she would get up in the morning, and she loved to play with her stuffed animals, and we'd like to play zoo with all the stuffed animals, lay them out. And she'd start to say, as soon as she got up, Mommy, I want to play zoo, but all the zoo animals are sleeping. And she would curl up with them and go back to sleep. And I brought her, it was just very atypical, and I called several times and finally insisted on blood work. And again, I was told maybe we were doing too much, that she was just growing pains. And I got a call the next morning that we had to come in and be admitted to Connecticut Children's Medical Center. Wow. That she did have leukemia, and we needed to start treatment immediately.
Wow.
So.
And that was the moment that your life changed.
The moment, and it is in a moment.
Right,
it's
right.
in a heartbeat. When they do say life can change in a heartbeat,
Right.
that was my moment. And life has never been the same, and it never will be.
Right.
I live in constant fear of a reoccurrence of cancer, of it coming back. She is in remission right now.
Wonderful.
And we've completed 3 years of very intense treatment. So she is in remission, but you never know.
No.
So you have the typical worries of a mom, of getting into a car or sending them off to school, dating someday, but then also that black cloud in the back of, is this going to come back and haunt her? When is it going to come back and haunt her?
Right.
So.
Well, walk us through what happened after after Zia received this diagnosis, and what was her treatment, and how she handled it. She's a little girl.
Yes.
How was she throughout this?
What made it very difficult when when she was first diagnosed is, as a parent, you are trying to put on a good front for your child,
Right.
but you are terrified. So I remember being in the emergency room with her, and we were about to go get our Christmas tree that day. So she had her Christmas tree shirt on, and we were out the door when the pediatrician called and said that we needed to go to the hospital. And I remember that smell of the snow and thinking, well, my day was going to go so differently. And all of a sudden, I'm at the emergency room with my daughter, and I'm hysterically crying. And my sister came to be with me. But my daughter's like, Mommy, why aren't we getting the tree today? I thought we were getting the tree. What are we doing here? And to have to keep a very powerful, strong face
Right.
when I was terrified, and just be like, oh, we're just getting a checkup, honey. Something's come up. We're just getting a checkup. And she was very strong at first. She was very strong. I think that's a blessing in a way. When this happens to a child, they don't have the stigmas and the fears attached to the disease that we do.
Right.
So for her, it was just something to get through. In terms of what her treatment was like, we were admitted for right away because she had 80% of her blood cells were leukemic.
Wow.
So they had to start treatment right away. And we didn't leave the hospital for over 40 days. So we were there for 40 days straight.
Wow.
She had a very difficult time in the first phase of treatment, which is called induction. And the purpose of that first phase, which is very intense, is meant to rid the body of all the leukemic blasts. And then after that month, you hope to reach a remission. That's how intense it is. And we were fortunate enough where she did. And then they enter a second phase of chemotherapy called consolidation, where you're trying to make sure that the bone marrow is not producing any new blasts. So you continue a different kind of chemotherapy. Then you go into something called delayed intensification. And that's when she really gets hit with about 2 or 3 months of very heavy chemotherapy. That's the worst phase. She needed to be hospitalized. Most kids don't. She needed to be hospitalized because she could not stand it. She would come home and just vomit for hours straight, and then she'd become dehydrated. So every week we needed to get that treatment. We were admitted to CCMC, and she would stay and basically just get so many drugs to put her out to endure the treatment. And of course she lost her hair and everything. Following that, it's called interim maintenance. And that chemotherapy gets a little bit lighter, and then there's maintenance, which she was in for the majority of the treatment. It's a lighter treatment, but it's meant to almost reprogram the body to start producing only healthy white blood cells.
And were you still in the hospital? Was she still in the hospital?
For maintenance treatment, we would just go week to week.
Okay.
So outpatient. The majority of her inpatient visits, our long inpatient visits, were the first, I'd say, 2 years. And the last year of her maintenance treatment was mostly outpatient, unless she got an infection she had a port put into her chest cavity through which the chemo would go. So that makes any child, any foreign body in there prone to infection. So anytime she got a fever, we had to be admitted into the hospital, not knowing if it was a typical fever or a bloodline infection. So we had several bloodline infections as well for which she had to be treated.
Wow. Poor
And
girl.
she was very brave. She did get very depressed at times. She was very self-conscious, believe it or not, at a young age when she lost her hair. But the good thing about her is she has really come to accept differences in people. She has seen so many things going in and out of CCMC, children with craniofacial problems, other children battling worse types of cancer, that now she's she embraces anybody, and nothing is too shocking, or she'll see someone and say, oh, I think they're going through treatment, so she's she embraces everybody, and for that's the gift that she's gotten from this.
Well, it's amazing that you can see that. I think to see a silver lining or embrace a silver lining in any of this is something that says a lot about you as a parent, and a lot about her as a little girl. So my hat is off to you for that.
Thank you.
Now, when you were first seeing that something might be wrong, you went to your pediatrician, and your pediatrician was hesitant or was aggressive?
I think, childhood cancer, in my world now, I feel like I see it everywhere. It's a problem, but it's not as common as some of the other childhood diseases. And so I don't think the typical pediatrician, when your child comes in with being tired or having a rash, she also had an unusual rash, the typical reaction isn't, oh my goodness, this is something serious. It's usually it is something not benign, something benign. So when I first called or brought her in, it was just, it's probably just growing pains or this or that. But I just felt in my heart it was something worse. The worst thing I thought it was going to be is Lyme disease. I did not expect cancer. But it was at that point that I said, I might be the hypochondriacal mother, but I want the blood work done just for peace of mind, and thinking I was going to get that peace of mind. And of course I didn't. But I'm glad that I insisted on it as a mother, that my instincts kicked in to do something. So otherwise we would have lost her.
Oh gosh, how tragic. Well, thank God you took action when you did, and she is now in remission.
She is in remission. She's at school as we speak. This is her first year of school. She's in first grade. I homeschooled her for kindergarten just to minimize her risk of infection. And I think she's enjoying it. I think she's enjoying being with other kids. We've really essentially lived in a very cloistered environment for the past 3 years to reduce our risk of infection. So she's enjoying being with other kids. And when the nurse took out her port that last day, she said, go and be a normal little girl right now. And I remember thinking, she's like a rebirth.
Right.
Like she can go now and live her life.
Right.
So.
And that's another issue that we really haven't touched on yet. There's a child with cancer, there's parents dealing with a child with cancer, but you have another child as well.
I do.
So this disease is affecting your whole family.
It absolutely does affect the whole family. And, you know, we're broken and we're trying to fix it. And we've stuck together. I have a son who's 4, so at the time of diagnosis, her diagnosis, he was 1.
Wow.
And so I felt like I never really got to bond with him because we were inpatient so much with my daughter, and I was probably the primary person staying with her in the hospital. My husband is a teacher, so I was the one with her. And so my son would be with my brothers and sisters or with his grandparents, and sometimes I wouldn't know where he was. Where's Julian today? He's in Boston, or with my brother Tom. So to not have any control over where he was, or to have any time to really bond with him, was difficult. And then the toll it took on us financially, emotionally. Financially, it tore us apart.
I'm sure.
And that's the least of our worries now.
Right.
I'll live in a tent if I can have my healthy daughter.
Right.
You know, but we lost a lot.
Wow.
But if I have them, we have everything, and we have our family, so we have everything. But it's hard, yeah.
It is, and I think that's something that gets lost when we're speaking about any issue with a child or anything that puts a family in crisis. It is a family in crisis.
Yes.
And you do have to rebuild from that, and I know how challenging that is on an ongoing basis.
Yes, it is very challenging because, you know, you'll hear people say that find your new normal. Well, nothing feels normal. I don't think there is a normal. And, you know, I had a normal that I was very happy with. I was a full-time teacher, a mother of two healthy children. We had a nice home. And all of a sudden, that's gone in a day. You know, I went to work on a Friday. She was diagnosed on a Saturday. I never went back to my job, never went back to my classroom. And so to try to redefine normal for 3 years, and then now redefining normal again because she's stopped treatment, it's very hard. And I know my son has felt the repercussions of this because the sun has risen and set on my daughter, you know, getting her through this crisis. And I know he struggles with eating. He struggles with sensory integration issues, and I know he's developed little phobias and things about everything. He's watched his sister so sick,
Right.
So he does see a play therapist too. But you know, we're trying to invest more time in him now too.
Good.
And build his self-esteem up and let him know how much we love him too.
Right. It's always hard to be everything to
Yes.
everyone at the same time.
Yes, it is at the same time, right? It's like a juggling act.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Well, all we can hope is that this is your new normal, and you are moving forward. And I know that sometimes out of crisis comes great passion for advocating for those who are affected with childhood cancer. And I know that is a step that you have taken as well. So as an advocate myself, I understand why this is so important to the picture. But tell us a little bit about what your next steps have been and what you have done and how you want to move forward.
Yes. You know, once her treatment was done, so many people were congratulating us. You're done, you're done, you're done, you're done. It's great, but we don't know what her future holds. None of us do as a parent, but when you do faced with your child's mortality at a young age, it is like a black cloud. And so, yes, while the treatment is over, it's going to haunt me forever, and I can't put that, it's a part of my life now. It's a part of our lives, and it always will be. And it's a part of so many other parents' lives that you just don't see on the street every day because they're stuck on the 8th floor of CCMC with their children hooked up to an IV. So I can't forget death. I can't forget it. I can't stop speaking out on behalf of my daughter and all the other moms and dads and children that are struggling with cancer and worse forms than my daughter. And so what I try to do now, because I haven't been able to go back to work because she might have a bumpy school year in terms of getting sick.
Right.
So I make it my business to advocate when I can for cancer control legislation. I'm a volunteer for Cure Search, which is a national nonprofit organization dedicated to children's cancer research and funding for clinical trials, which are just critical to all the positive changes and advances that have been made in childhood cancer over the last 40 years. There's a walk in Hartford on Sunday for Cure Search. I'm a volunteer for Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, which is the world's largest voluntary health organization for blood cancers. And I try every time Zia and I go to clinic to bring something, a random bag of magazines and toys, and leave it with the nurse's desk on the 8th floor for any mom or dad or child that's there that needs just to feel that the world hasn't forgotten them.
Right.
Because when you're up on that 8th floor, you just feel like you're not part of the world anymore.
That's all there is.
That's all there is. And so I just want people to know they're not forgotten. So I just bring something to let them know that I'm out here, even if I don't know them. And we're part of the Hole in the Wall gang camp.
Wonderful.
Keep my daughter. I don't want her to remember the horrible parts of this, but I want her to remember how blessed we are, that we have our lives, and the importance of giving back to others.
That's wonderful. Thank you for doing that. And you've been to Washington, D.C.
We have. We have. Another part of our life is we, on behalf of Cure Search, we went to Advocacy Day in Washington, D.C. back in June, my husband and myself and our 2 children. And we spoke to members of Congress about the importance of cancer control legislation on behalf of Cure Search. And the biggest things we were concerned about, there was a major drug shortage back in the spring. Methotrexate in particular is a hallmark of treatment for children with cancer. And there was a drug shortage. There was actually children not getting this drug at major hospitals throughout the country, this life-saving drug. And what happened is there was a disconnect between the FDA and the pharmaceutical companies, letting the FDA know when there was a shortage coming so that we could address the issue. So there's called the Cancer Survivorship Act, and the Creating Hope Act, and PDUFA. The PDUFA Act is making sure that there's access to these life-saving drugs and that any shortage is reported immediately to the FDA so it can be addressed. And they also try to give market incentives to the pharmaceutical companies to create new drugs for children with cancer. The Cancer Survivorship Act, fortunately, we've gone from a 10% survival rate 40 years ago to an 80% overall survival rate now.
Amazing.
It is amazing. So we're living in a good time. But what gives me comfort is everybody's out there, people at CCMC, I can't speak enough, doing research, Cure Search, Leukemia Lymphoma Society, organizations right here in Connecticut, Leah's Foundation, we're doing research to bring that up to 100%. And the Cancer Survivorship Act at the national level will address the needs of these cancer survivors, these pediatric cancer survivors, their unique health needs as they grow older. We don't know what they'll face, secondary cancers, infertility, learning issues, heart and lung damage, osteoporosis. This is the unknown.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we are earmarking some funds to address these issues for these children, like my daughter, as she gets older.
She's adorable.
So thank you. So addressing these latent effects as they become known to us.
Well, right, because when you are in this crisis, you are doing whatever you have to do in that moment.
Yes, to get through.
And you're not thinking about the long-term effects necessarily. So now that you are on the other side of it, it takes people like you, and I'm sure there are other parents doing this work as well, to say, okay, we're over the hump. Now let's look down the road and make sure that we fix this for others coming behind us.
For others coming behind us, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. And the irony now is, you're right, when you're in crisis mode, you're just getting through the moment. You don't have time to think about anything else but survival. But now that it's a little bit of a calm after the storm, now I'm thinking all the time about the what ifs and what could happen to my daughter. And I live in terror. I'm terrified. So to advocate gives me a purpose. It keeps me busy. It keeps me feeling like I could make a difference in my daughter's life and the life of all the other pediatric cancer survivors, that growing number, which is a positive thing. And I think, I know that Representative Chris Murphy signed on to those bills as well as Blumenthal, so we're grateful for that.
Wonderful. And I can relate to what you're saying a bit as a parent also, because I feel very strongly that if we as parents don't, and as constituents, if we don't bring these issues to our elected officials, they don't know that they are issues.
That's it.
So we need to be that voice. And if we
it.
don't do it, it may not happen.
It might not happen. And, you know, someone told me an amazing statistic in terms of advocating and key advocacy and grassroots advocacy. A representative or a senator might get 5 phone calls. And if 3 of them are about childhood cancer or about autism or about anything, it might get as little as 5 phone calls. And if 3 out of those 5 say, please support this bill, they'll say, well, that must represent my constituents, and I'm going to support it. So that one phone call is critical. That one visit, that one letter, that one response is critical. and it makes such a
Absolutely.
difference for parents out there. Just we all have a cause,
Absolutely.
and no cause is less important than anybody else's.
Right. So what can we do as a community to support families like yours?
I think that I have to say that Simsbury community has been fantastic to us. There's been people that have done personal fundraisers for us and whatnot, which was wonderful because of the cost of Zia's treatments that weren't covered by insurance. And for that, we're grateful. And there's a lot of resources available. You don't know about them until you need them,
Right.
So I appreciate that. And there was a lot of stores. We recently had one way that I know you can be helpful. Connecticut Children's Medical Center is a wonderful facility. They really are. And their hematology oncology department has the most wonderful clinicians from multidisciplinary backgrounds. They try every year to build up the survivorship clinic. It's called the Reach for the Stars Survivorship Program. And it's the survivorship clinic where they try to follow patients like Zia throughout their whole life. So we're prepared to address the unique issues that come up for her as she grows into adulthood, and those unknowns might happen. And they have a part of that is creating a surveillance program to track the health of these children and also address their psychosocial issues, financial issues, emotional issues as they grow and change. And every June there's the Cycle of Life event at Connecticut Children's Medical Center, which is a wonderful event that celebrates pediatric cancer survivorship and the whole family, and just helps push this initiative through for the survivorship clinic.
I always feel so fortunate that we have a resource like CCMC in Connecticut because, as you're saying, it reaches across many disciplines to be able to serve this unique population.
Yes.
And so we are very fortunate. So anything that we can do to support them is certainly worthwhile.
Yes, yes.
And we will put up information about CCMC and the Leukemia Lymphoma Society as well on the screen so people can get involved that way. So what's next for you? Well, how do you go day to day?
Day to day is hard because I'm by myself. I can't go back to work right now because I might get called an hour from now that she's sick because she has the immune system of a newborn baby now. So I can't go back full time. So I'm lonely in the day as a mom. That's by nature I'm a special education teacher, and I used to be in the classroom and used to be busy and have a routine, and now I'm kind of alone with my thoughts in the day, and I get very scared. And so that's when I turn to my advocacy efforts or turn to thinking about somebody else in need at the hospital that might be worse off than myself, and put together a package for them. And I'm just trying to learn the ropes now of the new normal again, that my daughter is in school like a typical little girl, and trying to celebrate that and appreciate that, and spend more time with my little boy when he's not in school.
Right. Right. Well, and I imagine that's another balancing act as well. So
yes.
Again, I give you so much credit for being as positive as you are at this point and coming through this with such a gracious spirit. So
thank you.
It's wonderful to hear. If there is one thing that you could tell a newly diagnosed family, what would that be?
Oh goodness. Call me because you feel alone. You feel alone, and it's surreal, and you're terrified all the time. And I wish that's one thing I do wish there was more of, is like a network of support, a phone chain, an email chain, something that could put in touch newly diagnosed parents with someone that's walked the walk, to tell them that there is light at the end of the tunnel, or just to hold your hand if it's rough, to be there. So I wish there was something. That is something I'm trying to put together, some sort of a website or something for parents whose families, a child has been newly diagnosed, to connect with somebody that's been through it. And just keep your family together. It's very easy to think you're not going to make it. It's very easy to think you're just going to walk away. But stay together. It's the hardest advice because you want to run away.
Right.
But rely on your clinicians and the staff, the child life specialists, the social workers. They're all there to help you, and to really depend on them. Don't be afraid to ask for help.
Wonderful. Thank you. And I know that's hard to be a resource sometimes too, but thank you for putting that out there. And I think it's important that families do know that there is somewhere to go, and that they are not alone, because being alone in a crisis adds to the crisis.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
for all that you do in your advocacy work and for spreading the word about childhood cancer and what we can do as a community to support you and families who are living with this as well.
And I thank you for having me on today. This is the media is the best way to build awareness, and I appreciate you having me here, especially in the month of September.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mary, for being with us today. Remember that September is Childhood Cancer Awareness Month, so you can learn more by going to the websites for Cure Search or the Lymphoma Leukemia Society. So thank you again for joining with us. This has been the Simsbury Woman. I appreciate you all being here to listen to our conversation and hope to see you again soon.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.